Okay, good morning. We have two public speakers, Mr. Bowden. Oh, and I want to say all the niceties like Chairman LeBeau did. Happy and a healthy New Year to everyone.
Very quickly, there are still a couple of unresolved questions I have with the bus, but Darrell and I have a working relationship, and I'm confident that over time they will be resolved. And other than that, I wish you all a very healthy New Year. I've given up on happy.
And Mr. Kupperberg?
MTA bus has some nerve rerouting the Q41 without a viable alternative. Currently, there's a major service gap in Richmond Hill. Shifting the Q41 from 111th Avenue to 109th Avenue further exacerbates this gap. There will be a longer walk for approximately twice as many riders than the current routing. Multiply that by 5 days a week, then multiply that by 52 weeks a year, and we're talking about disenfranchising a lot of riders in order to save a paltry $190,000. During the public hearings for the June 2010 service cuts, I proposed extending the Q89, Linden Boulevard West, discontinued in June 2010, to Ozone Park, and the rationalizing of service in Richmond Hill. The service planners may claim that the Q89 had low ridership, would be too close to the Q41, and to implement what I propose costs money. Here's where their argument falls flat. The Q89 terminated in the middle of nowhere, and there are plenty of bus routes throughout the 5 boroughs that are too close to other routes, but continue to thrive. Besides, the city of New York totally covers MTA buses' operating deficit. Rationalizing service in Richmond Hill will increase connectivity, making the borough of Queens more accessible by mass transit. With the Q89 restored and extended to Ozone Park, and possibly Lindenwood, it would serve the Aqueduct Racetrack and Casino and major intermodal transfer points along the way. It would turn a dead route into a viable one. This is proof that the MTA continues to plan and makes its decisions shrouded in secrecy and does whatever it wants without explanation or oversight. They reject all ideas to improve and expand service without providing a transparent methodology. Its planning and service guidelines are still not available on the website. The MTA needs to be more effective and responsive to its riders instead of the real estate industry. The new chairman needs to be focusing on better serving the passengers. He should be analyzing the corporate culture, i.e. how the MTA operates, how bickering between departments and blame shifting often prevents the MTA from being efficient. In other words, how to make the MTA more functional. You want to cut the fat, not the meat, and that takes a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I would like a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Tom, for the work plan?
Okay, we have updated the bus committee work plan for 2012 that begins on page 6 of the book. I wanted to note that with regard to the work plan, that MTA Bus will now be providing passenger environmental survey reporting on a semi-annual basis, consistent with what transit does already for bus. This will provide the committee with relevant performance data similar to what's been available in Department of Buses for years. The first PES report is planned for September and will cover the first half of 2012. I also want to note that in keeping with the work plan, we'll continue to report on Long Island Bus for the next few months as we close out the presentation of 2011 operational and financial data. And having said that, we request the committee's approval for the 2012 work plan.
I move the work plan be approved. Second.
All in favor? Okay, so moved.
Okay.
Thank you. Darrell?
Good morning, Chairperson Chevelle and members of the committee. As you are aware, on January 1, we finally transitioned our Long Island bus operations to Nassau County and Veolia after 38 years of operating the service. We left with our heads held high and a sense that we turned over a well-maintained fleet and provided them with a major level of information and support, as reflected in the successful handoff of the service. Tom Del Sorbo will provide additional details on the final transition events later in the meeting. Before we begin the regular portion of our meeting, I'd like to ask Sunil Nair, our Senior Director of Bus Customer Information Systems, to provide the committee with an update on the successful rollout of MTA bus time in Staten Island and the expansion of the program into further boroughs. Sunil?
Thank you, Darrell. My name is Sunil Nair. I'm the Project Director of MTA Bus Time. And before I begin my brief sort of update on bus time, I'd like to invite you all to take a brief look at a 3-minute video that talks about the MTA Bus Time product itself.
Bus Time is a real-time bus tracking system. It tells you where your bus is, and it's available via desktop, web, mobile, and SMS or text message.
One of the best parts about MTA Bus Time is you don't need a fancy smartphone in order to use it. Anyone who can send a text message can quickly and easily get real-time bus schedule information.
Hi, I'm Bruce Schneiger, an analyst for the development team for Bus Time. If you've been in the subway, you've seen the countdown clocks. We're doing something similar for bus riders, starting with Staten Island. It answers the age-old question of, where's my bus? If you know where your bus is, you don't have to wait for it. You can go out and meet it. It reduces your waiting time, reduces your uncertainty, and hopefully gets people to go out and ride with the bus.
Bus Time began as a pilot project on the B63 in Brooklyn in February 2011. We've learned a lot from the pilot. It's helped us move on to Staten Island and beyond.
One of the big goals for the project was to do it quickly and inexpensively. One way to do that was to use existing commercial hardware and existing software packages that are tailored to our needs. The modem, the GPS, the computer are all existing commercial hardware. We figured out how to wire it, how to mount it, and how to make sure it was tough enough for a New York City bus. The software is an existing package as well that we tailored for our needs. And the hardware that runs Bus Time is the same computer servers in the cloud that runs Amazon.com.
Bus Time being developed with an open source platform allows the MTA flexibility for the future, allowing the MTA to add new features to Bus Time, allowing them to choose a different vendor. It's about not getting in a situation where the MTA sort of has fewer options. Ultimately, I think open source is about providing more options to the MTA and ultimately to riders.
The MTA bus maps are really complicated. There are a lot of buses, so we're trying to create an easy-to-use digital experience by digitizing the bus maps onto a web-based platform as well as mobile and SMS. And the approach we took to the design is to make it so that your kids or your grandma can use it.
Bus Time's also going to make MTA a better MTA. We're going to use the data ourselves. We're going to improve service management, emergency response, scheduling, and a lot of other things. You won't see it, but we'll just be better. Bus Time is available now in Staten Island, and by the end of 2013, it'll be available in the entire city. Try it at bustime.mta.info. If you like it, tell your friends. If you have ideas to improve Bus Time, tell us. We want to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you. If I may direct your attention to the presentation, I'm essentially going to talk about two aspects. What is the current deployment status of Bus Time, and what are our future plans going forward? Well, like you heard on the video, at this point, Bus Time has been successfully launched in Staten Island on schedule, on budget, and on time. It was launched about 10 days back, and we've gotten some extremely positive feedback from our bus riders, bus customers, as well as application developers who plan to use the Bus Time data to develop new and exciting applications. At this point, what we want to do as a project team is to make sure that the Staten Island deployment goes off fine. We monitor the Staten Island deployment to make sure everything's okay, while at the same time, in parallel, plan the further borough rollout of Bus Time to all the other boroughs. I'm on slide number 4.
I'm sorry. Is there a timetable for that, approximate timetable?
We plan to finish up all boroughs during 2013, or by the end of 2013.
But incrementally up to then?
Correct, yeah. At this point, I'm happy to say that customers have various ways by which they can access Bus Time using multiple digital and mobile interfaces. As you can see on the screen right now, this is a website that all of our customers have access to. It is a fully interactive, feature-filled website that shows buses moving on a real map. These are actual buses moving in Staten Island right now near the St. George Ferry Terminal. You can actually click on a bus. It will tell you the bus number, the route that the bus is running on, the next set of stops that the bus is supposed to serve on that particular route. If you zoom into the map and essentially click on a stop on the route, it would tell you all the next several buses approaching that particular stop in terms of number of stops away or in terms of miles away. In fact, at this point, you can see a bus that is approaching. There's one bus at the stop. There's a second bus 0.9 miles away and things like that. You can do this for all stops, for all routes, both express and local in Staten Island. The second mode of access is using your mobile smartphones. You can bring up the same website on your smartphone, and the app itself is smart enough to figure out that the calling sort of device is a smartphone. So it loads up a much sort of stripped down version of the same website, which is specifically designed and formatted for smartphones. The other sort of access modes are customers who like to text can either text an intersection that they are standing at, or a combination of the intersection and the route that they're interested in, or a unique identifier assigned to every bus stop in Staten Island. So you can text any of these details to a particular number that is displayed prominently at guide rides at all bus stops. The number is 511123, and you can text, like I said, the intersection of the route or this particular unique identifier for every stop. The moment you text, within about 30 seconds, the MTA bus server sort of sends a message back to your cell phone indicating the next several bus arrivals for that stop. At this point, we are rolling out these guided rides to all bus stops in Staten Island, all express and local bus stops in Staten Island, and we should be done with the rollout in about 6 weeks from now. The other mode of access is called what's called a quick response code. On the same guided ride, at the bottom sort of right-hand corner, you have what's called a quick response code. It's a QR code. It's a two-dimensional barcode. Customers who have smartphones can scan this barcode. They do not need to remember any website URL or anything like that. They just scan the barcode, and the mobile website comes automatically up on their smartphones, which is relevant to a stop on their smartphone. So they can get to their next bus information that way. And optionally, if storefront owners are interested in creating bus time-like applications on their storefront, we've also deployed what's called a storefront display application. This will enable store owners with minimal technology smarts to use a LCD screen or to use a LCD screen, a wireless internet connection, and a small computer to put up a refreshing screen that essentially says, your next buses are 3 stops away to a stop that's pertinent to their storefront location. So there are multiple ways by which our customers can access it. On slide number 5, over the last 10 days or so, we have been monitoring feedback from our customers. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, and on slide number 5, I've put a sort of a sample of the feedback that we have gotten from our customers. The feedback has varied from the best thing the MTA has ever done for bus riders to when are you rolling out to the other boroughs. So it's varied across the spectrum. And of course, they've said people are excited at the idea of looking at a smartphone and finding out next bus information. Plans for 2012 and 2013, essentially our plan remains that we would do the Bronx by this starting next, and essentially go to one more borough before the end of this year. And during 2013, we plan to finish up all the other 2 boroughs. Thank you.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, Darrell, first I'd like to say thank you. This has brought about something I haven't experienced with the public in 3.5 years. The words MTA and this is great. People really love this. I get nothing but positive feedback from people on this.
You're a hometown hero now.
The best thing is to have lots of service, but until we can get to that point, at least having the predictability of when your bus is coming is just so important, instead of standing out on the corner and freezing rain. So, Darrell, I know you guys really move mountains to get this thing done on time. To your staff, The experience has been positive. The one comment to me that constructive in terms of if people have to switch buses, so they have to go from one bus to the other, the ability to be able to see two buses on the screen at the same time and how they relate to each other is something that you guys might want to think about. But this is a big home run for the MTA and for Staten Island, and thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that.
John's going to do the operations report.
The performance highlights for the month of November 2012 and the past 12 months are detailed on pages 11 and 12 of the committee book. For the month of November, combined MDBF was 4,124 miles, up more than 5% compared to 2010 levels. AM and PM pullouts, as well as completed trips, were 98.3, 98.9, and 98.1% respectively. Over the past 12-month period, combined MDBF was 3,373 miles, down 7.6% compared to the prior period. It should be noted that the fourth quarter of 2011 has seen a more than 6% increase compared to the same period in 2010, reversing the downward trend that we have been experiencing for most of 2011. AM and PM pullouts, as well as completed trips, were 98.5, 99.1, and 97.8% respectively, all lower by less than half of 1%. That completes the operations report. Are there any questions? I'd like to introduce Steve Vidal for the safety report.
Thank you, John. Our comments on the October customer and employee safety performance can be found on page 13 of your book. The 12-month rate for combined bus collisions per million miles traveled across the three bus units is 3.8% higher than it was in the prior 12-month period. Although the 12-month average rate is still higher, performance has continued to trend positive overall since we experienced the adverse impact of the December and January winter storms, and has decreased 7.9% in the right direction in this month. A review of preliminary year-end data reveals continued positive trending. With regard to collision injuries, October showed a monthly improvement of 13.2% across the three agencies, and we are 2.4% down in the right direction over the comparable 12-month average period. Despite the monthly 12-month average improvement, we are still not seeing a trend that is consistent with the overall downward movement of collision rates. We continue to investigate evidence at collision scenes to identify factors contributing to the accidents and to prevent similar incidents. There was a spike in customer accidents and customer accident injuries in October. We are carefully reviewing this trend in light of the introduction of a variety of new bus models, which we have taken delivery of over the second half of 2011. In the near term, we're providing supplemental training to all operators and conducting in-service safety campaigns. I will continue to update the committee on our efforts and include a full analysis of this performance at the upcoming 2012 safety presentation scheduled for March meeting. The 12-month rate for employee on-duty lost time accidents is 6.3% higher on a regional basis. While the anomaly of June's adverse trending in New York City Transit still accounts for the majority of the recent 12-month increase, overall performance has been trending in the right direction, as I noted last month, and is down 16.2% on a regional basis. We anticipate that the positive trending for MTA bus will continue in 2011 and that New York City Transit's performance will also continue to normalize over time as the balance of the year progresses. This concludes the safety report. Are there any questions? I'd like to introduce Tom Charles for the paratransit report.
Thank you, Steve. Paratransit report is on page 15. For the month of November 2011, accessoride paratransit ridership was up 2.6% compared to November 2010 levels. Able ride ridership levels decreased by 2.3% from November 2010 levels. 12-month ridership levels were down by 2.1% in accessoride and 5.6% in able ride. Over the 12-month period ending November 2011, there was a 4% decrease in accessoride requests for service. Able ride experienced a 5.6% decline in requests for service over the same 12-month period. Favorable no-show trends continued in the month of November as accessoride and able ride passenger no-shows declined by 34.4% and 38.8% respectively. The following is a brief update on the taxi prepaid debit card pilot.
As of December 15, 2011, 1 year to the date of the initial launch, we recorded 27,495 card transactions at an average cost per trip, inclusive of nominal gratuity of $12.76 for trips within the Manhattan corridor. We now plan to offer the use of prepaid debit card to paratransit-eligible registrants in the other boroughs beginning in the first week of February. Accessoride will assign scheduled trips to the broker for car service, and customers enrolled in the program will pay the fares on car services with their authorized prepaid debit card. Another item I wish to bring to your attention is the acquisition and delivery of the MV1. This is a first-of-its-kind, purpose-built accessible vehicle with a deployable integrated ramp for quick and simple passenger access, and has a spacious interior for a wheelchair user to turn and face forward in the front area next to the driver. As of today, we have received 16 of the 30 MV1s, of which 15 will begin in revenue service the week of January 30th. We have 2 MV1s on display, a gasoline-powered and a CNG-powered vehicle on Vanderbilt Avenue and the corner of 44th Street. Please take a few minutes to see another improvement in accessibility. This completes the paratransit report.
I had the occasion to run across in court in Staten Island, Accessoride Transit, working with the Inspector General and the local district attorney. I'm sorry? Settled a, not settled, the district attorney forced a restitution on an operator who was being unscrupulous in their billing towards us, and I was very pleased to see that the cooperation between our agency and the district attorney's office brought a restitution check as well as forbearance of several $100,000 of money that the operator was claiming was owed to them, which was essentially bogus billing. So I wanted to comment on a good job. My only regret was that I was unable to grab the check and put it towards bus restoration. But I was very happy to see the diligence involved in that.
Thank you.
Just one question, Tom. We talked a lot about the GPS on the buses, and I can't recall. Do we have GPSs in our paratransit vehicles?
Yes, we do.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, ridership. November report for ridership begins on page 14 of the book. For the month of November 2011, average weekday ridership declined at all 3 agencies when compared to November 2010. Long Island Bus average weekday ridership declined by 2.6% in November. MTA Bus declined by 0.8%, and New York City Transit Bus declined by 3.3% for the same period. Average weekend ridership in November was down at New York City Transit Bus by 2.5% and Long Island Bus just slightly by 0.1%, while actually increasing in MTA Bus by 2.5% as compared to the prior year. Express Bus ridership on weekdays increased slightly at New York City Transit by 0.6 in November, but fell 3.6% at MTA Bus. An early look at December 2011 ridership indicates that ridership rose at all 3 bus agencies when compared to actual 2010 data. Average weekday ridership for MTA Bus rose by 5.7, New York City Transit Bus by 4.8, and Long Island Bus by 2.4. However, the December 2011 increases are due primarily to the low ridership that we experienced on weekdays in late December 2010, which resulted from the blizzard that began on 12/26. So when adjusted to exclude the blizzard week, we looked at average school day ridership data, and we have now a slight 0.2% gain for MTA Bus and decreases of 1.9% for New York City Transit Bus and 1.4% for Long Island Bus when we look at it that way. I'll move on to the revenue and expense budget report as summarized on page 16. Year-to-date November 2011 farebox revenues for fixed route services are below forecast in all 3 agencies. MTA Bus is 1.7% below forecast, Long Island Bus 1.4%, and Transit 1% worse than forecast through November. Overall, this represents $11.3 million less in fixed route farebox revenues through November 2011, which is perfectly in conjunction with decreased ridership levels. However, on the expense side, November 2011 year-to-date, non-reimbursable accrued expenses reflect mostly favorable variances. MTA bus and New York City Transit bus were below forecast levels by 4.3 and 86.7 million in New York City Transit, respectively. The underruns are, again, a combination of paratransit economies, vacancy levels that have persisted throughout the year, reduced overtime spending, and timing of non-labor expenses. For Long Island Bus, we're actually 3.9 million over forecast through November due to claims and pension rate actuarial forecast increases and higher security expenses that we experienced in the fourth quarter. This concludes both the finance and ridership reports. Any questions? Okay, moving on to procurements. There are none this month for the committee to consider, so I will now give the floor to Norm Silverman for service changes.
Good afternoon. Gesundheit. There are 3 bus service changes included as information items in this month's agenda. 2 service changes are for MTA Bus and 1 for New York City Transit Department of Buses. The committee book also includes the list of bus schedule changes to be implemented on 63 New York City Transit bus routes in April 2012. The first service change on page 53 is a travel path revision of the B103 limited stop service in Brooklyn to use 7th Avenue and 5th Avenue instead of 3rd Avenue in the northbound direction. This revision would improve reliability and travel time on this high passenger growth route while eliminating use of congested 3rd Avenue through Park Slope, which has become congested due to the recent one-way pair conversion of 3rd and 4th Avenues in that area. This new non-stop path is used by existing local bus routes. The second MTA bus service change on page 58 is a streamlining of the Q41 local bus travel path in South Ozone Park and Richmond Hill. The current Q41 path requires numerous turning maneuvers through narrow streets, increasing travel time and adversely impacting service reliability. This happens to be one of our most indirect routes in the system currently. The revision includes keeping the Q41 on 109th Avenue in South Ozone Park instead of a historical diversion via 111th Avenue and using Atlantic Avenue instead of 95th Avenue in Richmond Hill. The reduction of travel distance and travel time results in decreased operating costs as well as providing more reliable and more attractive services, which is the prime reason for doing this change. Repeated experience has shown that such streamlining efforts actually increase ridership by delivering faster and more reliable service. This change would be implemented in June 2012. The New York City Transit bus service change on page 66 reflects bus service revisions in Eastern Bronx, the reroute of the BX5 to operate via Bruckner Boulevard between Crosby Avenue and the Pelham Bay Park Station at the number 6 line to both improve reliability and reduce travel time, and also extending the BX24 route along Westchester Avenue between Westchester Square and the Pelham Bay Park Station on the number 6 subway line to provide direct access to Westchester Square. This change would be implemented in April 2012. Finally, our committee agenda includes the April 2012 set of bus schedule changes for New York City Transit Department of Buses. A total of 82 bus guideline schedule changes on 63 routes are identified for implementation in April as noted in the staff summary on page 71. Of the 82 changes, there are 38 service increases included at an annualized cost of $4.2 million and 44 service reductions included at a savings of $4.9 million. This results in an overall net savings of $700,000 on an annualized basis, which is incorporated in the 2012 operating budget. Judy McLean is sitting in for Peter Caffiero, and I are available to answer any questions the committee may have regarding the foregoing. Are there any questions?
I'm going to comment on the first 2 bus service changes that you mentioned. In the case of the B103, you may be entirely right that 7th Avenue is a much more traffic-free street than 3rd Avenue. But you can, if you do that, you can really no longer say this bus serves the Gowanus neighborhood since it's 4 Avenue blocks away from there. I mean, it's certainly a different group of people you'd be serving.
Well, it really doesn't because it doesn't make any stops.
Doesn't make any stops there, right?
Right.
So it's just a transverse.
So this is a route that we inherited from the former private bus companies that was run as an express bus wannabe. It really wasn't an express bus. We made it a full-time limited, and it does have very wide stop spacing in that area. So no existing stops except one noted on the map in the downtown Brooklyn area.
Right, well, then it's a non-issue. In the case of the Q41, I was fortunate enough to ride along with the MTA bus people and actually watch this route and its zigzags. I mean, from its beginning in Howard Beach to its end in the Jamaica area, it's just unbelievable. It's like, well, I don't want to be pejorative, but it's as if somebody who didn't know what they were doing drew up this route, because it is just amazingly zigzags. And I think that this proposed route would probably save it a lot of time, and maybe in the best of all possible worlds, some of the savings they're going to realize can be put back into the service at some point. So I think that's probably a good change to make. It is ridiculously circuitous at the moment.
Do you ride every bus route?
No. And I think in the issue of the seasonal bus changes, many of us have sounded off before that on the transit committee. So, yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
Sure.
Okay, Alan?
Just once again, I don't understand why we have buses changes being reported to the transit committee and then being reported to the bus committee. And I would ask if the chair again communicate that to our new chairman so that we can resolve that, because it's never clear as to what meeting you have to show up at or take up a lot of time discussing it at two different meetings of the committees of the board.
I was curious about that myself.
Yes, and
shows up in both books.
Secondly, if the transit chair would see to it that I get also included in Mr. Merdler's the information that he requested, I'd be interested in that myself.
Application granted.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Did you want to explain? Well, I guess most of the people were in the previous meeting, so they know what Charles requested. Okay. Do we need to vote on the service changes?
Information item.
Okay.
Born
So,
LIB transition.
Yeah.
Brief update. Okay, in the early hours of New Year's Day, the final Long Island buses finished their runs. The last one came back around 1:30 in the morning. They were refueled. We emptied out all the cash. We took final readings across the entire depot. We handed all of the revenue and facility keys, and we left Mitchell Field Depot as a new era of bus service was ushered in Nassau County. Since January 1st, we have had no significant requests from either Nassau or Veolia with regard to any issues that they've found or inherited since the transition. It's been very quiet on our end in terms of dealing with them. As Darrell mentioned earlier, I do think it's a testament to the comprehensive nature of the hard work that many of us around the table, and certainly in buses, in fulfilling the MTA's mandate to ensure a pretty successful transition and both provide them with a safe and reliable fleet. On a positive note, practically 100% of all represented and non-represented LI Bus employees either secured a position with the new bus operation or were placed in vacant positions within other MTA agencies, primarily buses. So there was really nobody left on the street. The memorandum of understanding for NICE to use the AFC MetroCard system is signed, in place, and it's working. The Long Island Railroad unit ticket is also being honored by the railroad in conjunction with NICE bus service. The MTA's website was updated to provide information on MetroCard use and transfers between NICE and New York City Transit MTA bus services, and also to provide transfer and connection information from the Long Island Railroad. We have an agreement with Nassau for a small transition staff to use their office space there at their facility to complete our closeout tasks, which include completing the final payrolls, cleanup of receipts for goods and services that we procured at the end of the year, and the year-end financial audit. And finally, as requested at last month's meeting by Mitch and one other commissioner, we're still awaiting their final copies of their recently ratified collective bargaining agreement with Local 252 in Veolia, so we can understand the changes that they might have made. And we do have an understanding with Veolia's management that we will sit down with them, get a much better understanding of their business model, and determine what kind of applicable lessons we might be able to learn and incorporate into our own bus operations. But I think they really want to get through January, February before we probably will engage them fully on that. And that completes my update. If there's any questions, we'll be happy.
At some point, once you get a copy of the contract, which I assume they will give you,
Yes, I mean, my understanding, Mitch, is that even though it was ratified, they're still red penciling some of the language.
So at some point, we will get a cost differential analysis, both based on the contract and other activities of their operation to determine their cost issues and our cost issues.
I think we'll probably...
That's
yes.
the point here.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously look at the contract from a standpoint of, you've got to really do some net present values because they have some things in pension and health, and then there's the other sort of productivity type issues, either within the CBA or things they're doing outside of the CBA.
Okay, because that's the analysis that I think has to be done to determine whether it's applicable or not applicable in that regard, but knowing the cost differential is obviously the most important part of this discussion.
Correct. We just hope for full transparency in getting that information.
Thank you.
Congratulations on doing it so seamlessly. The announcements that came out of Nassau County was that this was going to save Nassau County some telephone number like $31 million. Do you believe that?
Well, it's based on the cost of running the operation that we had in the 2011 budget, and it represented their subsidy going up to the full level to support that operation. So I think that's the basis of the numbers.
It would be really nice if the money that the MTA saved on the Long Island bus operation could now be put back into the existing bus operation.
Any other questions? That concludes the meeting.